Hi guys, it's Hannah and welcome back to the Dyslexic Reader. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in July 2020, which seemed to just fly by for me. I can't believe that we're almost into August, and my reading was a bit up and down this month. I really nailed the reading rush. If you want to see my vlogs for that, they're up on the channel. You can go and watch them. But other than that, it hasn't been a great reading month for me, so it's a bit up in the air. I've got loads done, but like the most of it was all during the reading rush. And this is a different filming setup for me. I mean, it's the same location, but I've got a new tripod and it has to go in a different place of the room. So you're slightly further away, but I hope that it works out okay. And you see me looking down, it is because I am looking at my iPad that I have all my books on to remember. So I think in June I mentioned that the last book I finished was The Lost World, which is the second Jurassic Park book. And I really liked it. It was 4 stars. It was just fun, an easy read, and like a nice continuation. There was a few things that knocked it down from a 5-star for me, but overall it was very enjoyable. Then the first book that I read in July was Disney After Dark, which is the first in the Kingdom Keeper series by Ridley Pearson. And this was not good for me. It was so badly written. The premise was really interesting. So it's about these kids that are basically assigned as keepers for Disney World, and they go to Disney World like at night when nobody's there, and they have to protect the parks because the Disney villains are like coming alive and trying to take over the park because they want like the power of it. So the concept was interesting, but it was not well done. It was like the actual writing was bad, the characters were not developed very well, and the premise just had some sort of weird glare, not even plot holes, but like it just didn't make sense in parts. And I was talking about this on my video that I done a couple of weeks ago on series that I have started, and I'm unsure whether or not to continue. And I was saying that I hope that this was clearly written to be a standoff, like a standalone, and it obviously done well, so they turned it into a series. And I'm hoping that once they turned it into a series, did they maybe then get better because they realized there was popularity, so this was just meant to be a wee throwaway thing, and then they were like, oh, this is actually doing really well, we should like make sure these are good. So I'm not sure if that happened or not, but I'm unsure whether or not to go for the second one. I should have prepared and brought my little book stack over. Then we get into the reading rush books. So there was another 2 books I didn't finish after the reading rush, so I started them before the reading rush. So until the reading rush, which started on the 20th, I only had finished 1 book, and it was that Disney After Dark book. But I had got over 500 pages into a 600-page book, and I was most of the way through another fantasy book, but I'll talk about them later because I only just finished them a couple of days ago. So the first book of the reading rush was Investigations of a Dog by Franz Kafka, and I didn't really enjoy this. It was fine. I really think that we could have used a different perspective. It's from the perspective of a dog, and he goes about doing dog things, but the dog like thinks in a way that we would think humans would think, which is an interesting concept. But I think it would have worked really well as a short film if we'd have been seeing the dog doing the doggish things, but hearing him narrate in a really human way, because it got to the point where I was kind of forgetting that he was a dog because the voice was so human and they were talking about stuff so vaguely, like eating and finding friends and sleeping, that humans do as well, that it kind of lost the dog aspect of it. But it was definitely well written and it was a bit interesting. There was a couple of wee lines I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool, but overall I think a couple of wee tweaks could have made it better, so it was only a 3-star. Then for the whole reading rush, for 5 of the challenges I read the complete Percy Jackson series. This was not my first time reading this. I'd read them all, I think about 3 or 4 years ago. And then I read the first 2 about 2 years ago in the attempts for a reread, and only read the first 2. So I had a pretty good idea of the first 2, but the last 3 were a bit more hazy in my mind. I didn't have all the details, and I thoroughly enjoyed all of these. It definitely is a really good middle grade series if you're into middle grade, if you're into like mythology or urban fantasy. Like, I don't think you can go wrong with these. Like, if those are things that you're into, these are definitely worth the read. The funny thing was, the first time around, and I need to go back and see if it's on my channel when I read these the first time around, because I'm not sure. If it was 3 years ago, I would have been on BookTube. If it was 4 years, I would have been just started too. So I'm not sure if it was on here. But I remembered The Sea of Monsters being my favourite and not enjoying the last two books. And this time around it was the complete opposite. I found Sea of Monsters the hardest. Like, it was like, oh, come on, get this finished. And the last two I really thoroughly enjoyed. So I'm not sure what was up with that. But yeah, they were all really good. I really enjoy the characters. I really enjoy the premise. And the reason why I wanted to reread these is because I want to read the Heroes of Olympus series, which I did start, but I can't get to my library or anything. So I just got them on the Kindle. So I'll put the cover in. I read The Lost Hero, which is the first Heroes of Olympus book. I have now started the second, but I haven't got very far into it. And it is basically like a spin-off series. All the characters from Percy Jackson's in there, and it kind of picks off where this series leaves and continues, but there's new characters, new perspectives added. And I attempted also to read this series once, and the multiple POVs really like put me off, and I don't know whether I just wasn't in the mood at the time to be reading it, or whether I've got better with that kind of thing. But this time around, it's still not my favourite. I would prefer if it was just written in third person, but I'm not finding it as difficult this time, so that is a good sign. Then I finished, so this was one of the books I started before the reading rush, but didn't finish to after, The Raging Storm by Erin Hunter, which was the 6th and final book in Warriors, A Vision of Shadows. So there's loads of Warriors series, and it's a fantasy series about cats, and this is the Vision of Shadows branch, and it's the only like branch that I have read, and I did not enjoy this. I thought it was such a bad ending. I really enjoyed the start of the books. I thought they were really like different and fun and had really good character development. But every book became the same story after a while, and the ending was so meh. It was like nothing happened. It was just bad. Like, I just didn't like it. The writing was still fine, and the character development through the series was great, but it was such a bad ending, so that did not round me off well for the month. But I did also finish The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. And this is a chunker of a book. I was out with my dad one day and I had this with me when I was reading it. He went to pick it up to move it, and he was like, this book is so heavy, like it weighs an absolute ton. It's about 700 odd pages, and they're big pages and the text is dense in here. But this is a story about a young girl who finds that her father, who was a historian, was somehow connected to the story of Dracula. And Dracula as a vampire, but also I didn't know before reading this book, Dracula was based on Vlad the Impaler. So there was kind of like, he was a fictional vampire, but he was also based in this, like he was a real person in this book. And her father is somehow connected, and it goes back and forth between a lot of different timelines, which was hard to follow at points. And as well, all the characters are going on basically the same journey of realizing that vampires are real and trying to research it. And a lot of them follow the same clues and the same paths, and they're all having different characters in different stages, in different decades, and then told muddled up, which is hard. So it goes between her father, and her father's mentor, really, and some of it's told through their perspective, and others is told through like letters. And then there's obviously her perspective, but she's writing this as an old woman, so it's her perspective as an old woman, and her perspective as a teenager, and her perspective of her reading her dad's letters, but also her dad writing those letters. Do you understand what I mean? So it's very jumpy like that. And I found it so intriguing to about the halfway point, and then I was like, okay, we've kind of worked out what's going on here, wrap it up. I think the pacing was a bit off in that way. I think it could have been easily 150, 200 pages shorter, and they could have wrapped it up a lot quicker. It was kind of like one clue leads to one clue, leads to one clue, leads to one clue, leads to one clue. And really by the halfway point, we'd all worked out like what was going on anyway. So they could have like eliminated the last, if there was 7 clues that they followed, they really could have like went like 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, like 5 and 6 were unnecessary. They were just chasing around Europe, really not adding to the story. But it was certainly interesting. It wasn't like much things that I read, so if it sounds interesting to you, I would recommend it, but it didn't rate very highly for me. It was a really, really high 3-star, but it didn't quite make 4-star. And that's all I've got around to this month. So outside the Reading Rush, I only read 3 books. The Disney book, which wasn't good. This, which was okay. Like, it was good, but it wasn't, it was fine. And The Raging Storm, which was also bad. So I'm really glad that the Reading Rush went well for me, because outside of that, I have not done well. Currently, I am starting to read the second book in the Heroes of Olympus series, and I think that I'm going to continue on that throughout August and see how that goes. After I'm done filming this, I am also going to film a haul. I went shopping yesterday and kind of got lost and bought a whole load of books. So if you want to see that, stick around. It'll be up in the next couple of days. I hope you're all happy. I hope you're all healthy. I hope you had a good reading month, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Goodbye.